Good afternoon and welcome to yet another Facebook Live in the Peace Project. And I'm joined today by David Harris. Dave, do you want to do a quick introduction? Because actually I went onto your website and looked at all your different qualifications and there was a lot. So I'd actually love for you to give people a little bit of a background information about who you are and before we dive into today's topic of language.
And until 20 years ago, I was in the corporate world. I had a corporate job, corporate car, corporate pension and stuff, and found myself at midlife crisis, I suppose you call it. What is it Brené Brown calls it? Spiritual awakening / midlife crisis. And decided I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. And that's where all the heavy training started. So I started with NLP and then did some NLP training, then did the master practitioner, then did the coach training, then worked for the company that provided the training, helping supporting them with resource teams, and just kind of felt my way through what felt right for me in a learning context. So I kind of got lots of badges and things, which I dip into, but I wouldn't say I'm any one of them. I kind of blend things that they work. I'm kind of a pragmatist when it comes to things like that. I just, if it works, I use it. And if it doesn't, and actually not only if it works and feels right, I do it. Because sometimes things work and they just don't feel right for me. So I stop. Done quite a lot of coaching for people, not so much now. Predominantly horse assisted education is what I do.
Hence the video behind you.
Hence the horses behind me. They are real, but they're not behind me.
Yeah, so you've really mastered the technology, because you were telling me this is a video you took Monday. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And you've got playing as so kudos to you, because I think that's pretty impressive, and it looks great as well. So
good. Well, I'm glad you like it, and it's funny because we did the thing yesterday, and it feels like they're kind of there, and. Because every time I look up, and this is the thing that I struggle with Zoom about a little bit. You spend a lot of time looking at yourself, don't you? As well as other people. I've never looked at my face so much. It's incredible. So yes, it's an altered reality, but still a reality.
I just love that the top half of me is presentable and the bottom half is usually my mucking out clothes.
There you go. It's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing.
I'm actually smart today, but hey.
There you go.
So my topic for today is I came up with the title Situation Normal because I caught myself on Monday going into this excuse that I was justified and I had a right to feel stressed because of COVID. And I know from my own training, I know a little better than that. And when I interviewed you a few weeks ago, didn't I, with Emma Taylor?
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me is, I don't know whether you said this exact phrase, but certainly I've heard you say it at some point, is that as horse owners, we eat uncertainty for breakfast.
Absolutely.
And so I realized there's a whole piece here to be talked about the language that we use and how we're describing our current situation. And just taking the current situation as an example, this is happening in our life. You've got a great example about a road rage sort of reaction that you used to have. And just exploring that a little bit so that people can bring that into their awareness and actually do what I do now, which is catch themselves before it becomes entrenched, and then before you're going down this whole unconscious path. And so, yeah, tell us your road rage story, because that's a great story.
Well, I used to have the experience of driving my car, and if someone pulled out in front of me or cut me up, I really am a mild-mannered person until that happened. And the red mist would come down, I'd turn into a monster. And one of the things that struck me was, if they pulled out in front of me, I would brake at the very last minute and screech to a halt. If they cut me up, I would really make it difficult for them to get in. And then I was traveling with Sharon, and someone did it. So Sharon, my wife, driving with her, or she was driving, and someone did it to her, and she went, "Oh dear." And I thought, actually, my initial thought was, she's doing that wrong. It was like, but it really, when something lodges with you, and it was actually at the beginning of my journey of discovery. And I talked to my friend Barbara, and I said, this happened. And she's got a wonderful way of just kind of simplifying things. She looked at me and she said, "You're telling yourself a story, dear." And I said, "No, they're idiots." And of course, that was the story. Interestingly, when I really started picking it apart, The story was, these people are disrespectful and unsafe. And the worst bit was no, it wasn't a response. It was a reaction. And I think then there's a difference. My reaction was to be truly unsafe and disrespectful, because one of the things I now know is when someone's going to pull out in front of you, you can see it coming. Once you look, you just know. And if someone's going to cut you up, let them in. You really are going to have an accident if you don't. So if we're not careful, we become the monster that we're creating a delusion of what the other person is doing. And then we become that monster that we're accusing them of, which is interesting. So first of all, it's a delusion that they're disrespectful and unsafe. They may be, who knows? The challenge is by stepping into that reaction, you disempower yourself. Because any time that someone chooses to upset Dave in a car, or they just have to press the button for road rage and it happens. So you become a victim of circumstance. And if we look at what's happening now, we could all be really accused of that. Viktor Frankl, I think is the guy's name. It was the master of this. He wrote a book. I've actually forgotten what the book was called, but fundamentally he was in a concentration camp. And he said, they can kill you twice if you don't do what he was sort of found that he could do. He said the first way they could kill you was physically to stop your pulse, but the second way was by completely disenfranchising you and making you feel like you had no choice. He said, but actually part of that was us letting them, because what he used to do every day was say, this is a situation I don't like. How do I choose to be with it? So this is an incredible, I mean, and this is profound now, because this is a man who it's, if you could define a victim, that would be it. And he chose not to be. So it's an extraordinary thing. And I think when we feel disempowered and when we feel that we're not in control, the irony is rarely are we in control, but it has this impact on us, which puts us in the energy of victim, which is not useful because it means there's nothing we can do. Sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, great answer. And I feel like there's more, because I'm like, well, I guess my next question is, well, what do we do instead?
The first thing is consciousness. And I don't mean sitting on a mountain going on for hours. I mean, just start paying attention to state change, or often these things, ironically, I used to do that and then feel bad, the car thing, and then feel bad about it. So there's an incongruence, isn't there? There's an incongruence within us because we do something and then later feel bad about it. So there's a misalignment internally somewhere. If we start noticing those misalignments and get curious about it, so often we go, I must stop doing that, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure that's totally useful, because we then create a resistance and a force of resistance. You and I both know that when you get resistance, there's two ways of it. If you can actually look at it and go, whoa, that's kind of interesting. What's underneath it? And the structure of what we're actually doing is a very simple and an age-old structure called stop, challenge, choose. The first bit is the stop, but you have to be conscious to stop. You have to be aware something's happening that you want to stop. And stop takes a second. You just go, okay. And the next thing is challenge. What is happening? The challenge is, what is happening? What's going on? Okay, this person has pulled out in front of me and I'm telling myself they're an idiot. Now, someone pulling out in front of you, you're not going to do it that quick, but you can pull it apart afterwards. And then the choose part is, now I've gathered the data in the challenge, how do I choose to proceed? Do I choose to be angry, or do I choose to say, this person could be having a bad day? They could have an ill child in the back of the car. Mm. If the delusion was they really need to get somewhere quickly for a safety reason, you would, if it had an ambulance on the car, you'd wave them in front. So it is a delusion. So why not choose your delusion? Why not choose how you wish to proceed? Then you're in a place of power. then you can, power and choice go hand in hand. So then you can say to yourself, okay. And the interesting irony of this is, Becky, you could do exactly what you'd done in a reactive sense. So I would call stop, challenge, choose responding, and I would call reactive something there's no cognitive element to. You could actually physically do the same thing and feel completely different about it because it's a choice. You're not a victim to something.
That makes a lot of sense, and people are hitting the like button, so this is really resonating.
Cool.
With what you were saying. So, with regards to our current circumstances, what I'm hearing you say is, okay, so we are in a situation and it's unfamiliar in a way. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to draw on is to challenge actually our preconceived ideas and reactions to these situations so that we can make a new choice. And I remember in the first interview with you, you said, I hope we learn something from this.
You see, this is commonly VUCA is the like a business term that's been used for actually generally how business happens now: volatile, unpredictable, chaotic, and ambiguous. And business is, and guess what? Life is at the moment. And people feel scared. And part of the reason that they'll feel scared is because we like to be in control. That's the quote I hear all the time. Good luck. Good luck. What can you control? You get in your car, you're in your control of your car, and the battery's flat and it goes, you're not in control of it. But we create this delusion to feel safe. How about, and so often people's way of dealing with chaos and unpredictability is to try and make something concrete again, so they can feel safe. Again, good luck. But again, it's a delusion because nothing is, I thought about this morning. I go into the field with the poo picker and I've got 3 horses lying down flat. How many times have you got that? And how many times have you thought they're all dead? Very, very occasionally one or something, it does happen, but we kind of go into this whole thing, which actually means we're not present because all you've got to do is go and touch them. So when dealing with VUCA, the skill is actually, how do we get comfortable with acceptance of, actually, a friend of mine recently said to me, acceptance is the booby prize. Embracing is the goal. How do we then be in an environment of uncertainty and embrace it, which is, I think, can be a useful thing to do, because then we can start looking for, with the embrace, we can start looking for what can we change with this? I mean, in a way, we're doing it right now. How many times before COVID did you and I do this? Rarely, if at all. Actually, no, a little bit, but not much. Certainly not publicly. So there's all these things we can look at. And now, I want to be really clear. It is horrendous. Of course it's horrendous. People are dying. People are getting really ill. People are, separated from people they want to be with. I'm not belittling what is happening, but what I am saying is we are so much more resourceful if we can manage ourselves to say, okay, this is the reality. Is it a reality I want? No. How do I choose to be with it? Do I choose to run around blaming someone, something for what's happened, or do I accept the reality of it? And then with the acceptance say, okay, I accept this is happening. And acceptance doesn't mean you like it. It just means can I change it? No, you can't. But what you can, so I always say with control, there's only one thing you can control really, and that's your response to a situation or something. So when we can embrace stop, challenge, choose, what we actually do is we say, right, I can't see my grandchildren, brother, whatever, for a period of time. How do I choose to be with that? Do I choose to engage, look to the technologies that we have and engage with that? And if it had been 40 years ago or whatever, would I be sitting down writing letters or whatever, finding a way? And so often when we step into these spaces, we find there's something neglected that we find again. So often. So it becomes a gift.
Yeah. And actually, as you were speaking, I realized really it's quite smart to just start projecting into the future and just say, this is the situation today.
This is, bless him, Captain Tom. The only thing that he used to say is tomorrow's going to be a good day, and and I agree. He used to say that, and and I think you can also do the next hour's going to be a good hour. The next minute is going to be, the thing with presence is often when you come into presence, and by the way, by stop challenging choosing, you're becoming very present because you're saying, what's my reality now? By getting present, often what we notice is the fear or whatever is happening from that is either future-based or past-based. This is a pattern that I've learned, which means in the past, and last time I did this happened, which means you're not present because when you were 6 or whatever, bit of an expert on being 6, or this will happen. So you're in the future. If you can actually come to the present, often you can, you focus on what is my next step. Yeah. And then and by the way, that's probably the only thing you've got control over anyway. So there's a kind of interesting cycle of presence. With the presence allows you to stop, challenge, choose. And then with that, you then can make choices to navigate what it is you're experiencing.
Yeah, and I agree. And those stories that we tell ourselves, the moment that we become aware of them, we become conscious of them, they lose their power.
Absolutely.
But if they're running as unconscious scripts, they have the power to create all sorts of emotional responses within us.
I can remember being in the corporate world, and actually it's when I started doing NLP, and someone said to me about, how's work? And I said, well, it's hell, but that's what we do. And they said, well, why don't you stop doing it? And I said, if you want to earn good money, it has to be hell. And as the word, yeah. And by the way, as my friend says, I didn't lick that off the floor. I inherited that from my dad, not deliberately, clearly, but my dad used to hold that. If you want to be, all people who are rich, first of all, they're bastards. And secondly, they hate it. And as the words left my lips, it was an interesting experience because it was like slightly out of body. It was like, did I just say that out loud? And these are, because they're not conscious often until something like that happens. You and I both know as coaches, when someone says, this sounds crazy, but it's going to be brilliant. You know that because it's coming from there other than conscious. Yeah. When we can start understanding that those beliefs and those reactions that we hold are associated with things, when we can get conscious with them, we can literally redraw history. Because what we can actually do is say, you can't change the past, but you can change your relationship with it. NLP is an awful lot about study of excellence and how we can change relationships with things, really. And there's some really simple exercises where you don't actually change the thing, but you can realign your relationship with it so that it serves you and helps you to grow. Because so often what actually happens is they hold us back in some way or block us in some way. It's not until you get conscious with it, you can change it. And actually that acceptance and conscious is half the story. It's then what you do with that consciousness. Because you can say, you could say, for instance, well, work, you have to work hard and die young if you want to earn money, and just leave it at that. And that's acceptance. Mm. But then the next question is that what I want? And do I choose to hold that? Or do I actually find a new reality, a real reality, by the way? The other one was perceived. A new reality which says I can have a job that will service me financially beautifully and adore what I do.
Yeah, I hear that. So we've got a few people on the line.
Yes.
Now, so hi Del, hi Charlotte, Jenny, Carolyn, Fabrizio, Heike, Nikki. So if any of those that you're watching right now, if you've got any questions around what Dave and I are talking about how can we perhaps change the language that we're using, how can we embrace, or you want to ask for some advice about something, then type up a comment and we're here to serve, aren't we?
Absolutely. And as you were saying that, Becky, you said the language we use. One of the things that I noticed that I can slip into is how I speak to and about myself. So if I do something that's not really what I wanted to do, oh, what an idiot, the internal dialogue. Careful what you tell yourself. I think it was one of the dictators said, you find a lie, you keep telling it, and you keep telling it loud, and eventually people will believe you. I think it was Goebbels, actually. And dictators, that's what they do. Now I'm going to leave that there. But guess what? We can do that to ourselves as well. We can say, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, what. If we start getting conscious of the language that we're sharing with ourselves, then that's a really powerful thing, because also what you can do is you can flip that, what a stupid thing to do was to, well, was it really, or was it a mistake and I choose to learn from it? Really makes a big difference. In NLP, they call it a reframe. And a reframe can make all the difference.
Oh, huge difference. In my mind detox practice, which has got lots of crossovers with NLP,
yes.
You're taking a past event and it's never what happened, it's why what happened is a problem for you. You heal that, then it becomes a neutral event experience, or even constructive, like you say, because it's become a learning experience, and you feel dramatically different in your own body. Dramatically different, to the point where actually people come to sessions, they forget what they came for once it's done.
Best feedback ever. If the number of times we've done a process and you ask, because often we calibrate when you can do a process. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is this for you to be with this? 9 or 10, big, and their eyes are, saucers and everything. You do the process and you say, okay, let's recalibrate. And they say, yeah, what is it we're recalibrating? It's gone from this to, oh, it's out there somewhere, which, and to be really clear on this, sometimes people's view on these things is, just forget about it. No, what's missing from the just forget about, or just even worse, just pretend it didn't happen. Our body and our, other than conscious, brings this to our attention for a reason. If we go forget about it or ignore it, we're not honoring that part of us which is bringing it into our consciousness. And basically it's like, having a headache and or having a headache constantly for a month and just keep taking Nurofen. You're trying to numb it, but you're not addressing the root cause. When you find out what the cause of the headache is, you'll sort it out. The same thing is with these things. When we start viewing it and engaging with it in a different context, it shifts and often becomes completely insignificant.
Yeah. Nikki says, I haven't seen my partner for 4 months due to COVID and flight restrictions. I love how David says, how do I choose to be with this? Would definitely use this. I get up each day and say, I choose to be, your comment's so long, Nikki, I can't read the bottom of it. Oh, happy and content today.
Absolutely. There's something that came into my life recently. Was a friend of mine recommended a book, and it's called The Invisible String. A mother, and by the way, this is a classic example of stepping into your power. A mother was taking her child to school and he got very upset every morning about the separation. And so she wrote a book called The Invisible String. And fundamentally, it's about when you love someone, you're never disconnected. You're always, there's an invisible string that connects you. Actually, I'm going a little bit tingly just mentioning this. And he said, oh, great. So because you're not just there, you're not gone, you're just on the end of the string. Complete reframe. That's a classic example of a reframe, and a classic example of this is something that I'm really not feeling good about. What action can I take? Not accepting it, well, you'll get over it after 3 months. It's saying, what action can I take to help this situation? She wrote the book. And here's a classic example of how these things, something incredible comes out of them. That book, how many young children and how many mums and dads have read that to their children and got so much from it? And by the way, the little story about why she wrote it is at the back. So you understand the context as well. That what you could view as an unpleasant event, and of course it was, has now morphed into the most extraordinary thing. It's a classic example. So Nikki, God bless you. That's a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, I love that idea. I've got friends all over the world right now that, I love this idea, and I don't struggle with lack of connection actually, because I realize how connected we all are, and I do feel very connected to people. But I understand for some people that they may feel physical separation means loss of connection. So just like you say, that reframe. And it's elastic, isn't it? I feel like sometimes people are going to be close in your life and sometimes they're going to be far away. And to be okay with both scenarios. And
you can be sat next to someone and be distant to them. Yes. And you can be a million miles away and feel like, you get on the phone to someone you haven't seen for a year and you're like, boom, you're still connected to that person. We think connection, this comes up with the horsework often. We think connection is a physicality thing, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. It's your relationship with the energetic space or the person or whatever it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, take the situation like Nikki's, that being apart for that period of time. Whenever I've been in a situation like that, there's always some magic that comes out of it afterwards. You develop some kind of resource or an additional gratitude that brings the coming back together and makes it very magical.
Joni Mitchell says, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, And I think, how many... So do you know one of the things that I've missed most is I hold my granddaughter's hand. We walk along and my hands, you can imagine what my hands are like, Becky, can't you? They're rough and calloused and often dirty, and hers are pretty little, and I have missed that so much, and being with the grandchildren, but that's just one of those things that sticks with me. Do you know something? If I sit down and concentrate hard enough, I can feel her hand. So, and would I rather physically do it? Of course. But how about I choose to accept and embrace what is? And then, and guess what? The great thing is now, if I'm working in the US, learning that skill, I'm working in the US, I can hold my granddaughter's hand anytime I like.
Yeah, exactly. So to sort of wrap this conversation up, because we're coming to the end of the time, and Carolyn says, great question and answer. I needed to be reminded. I'm not quite sure which question you're talking about, Carolyn, but brilliant. I'm glad we answered it. But just to wrap this up for me, I think my learning that I took on that Monday is, what if I stopped saying, oh, it's because of COVID? What if I just said, this is normal? Just like act as if this is a normal day. Stop giving it too much power. Start stepping into saying, no, I can do this. This is within my comfort zone. Re-empower myself. And I can look back and go, wow, that's amazing. But the thing is, my skill set will have stretched. My capacity will have stretched, great as a coach and someone that works in this domain all the time. This has been a workout. It's been
Absolutely. When we do that stuff, then instead of becoming a victim to it, we become powerful in ourselves and we grow. We both know when you step outside your comfort zone, you learn something, and it can be as profound or as simple as you like. Both of them are learning and both of them are powerful. So, it gives us additional resources, and guess what? 10 weeks ago, normal was very different to what's, actually normal now. The irony is what's actually going to happen is for some people, going and connecting with people is going to be the abnormal again. Yeah. So, normal is fleeting. Unlike Norman. I don't know why I said that.
I think I'd already come to the realization there is no normal. We don't have control. Life is uncertain. This has been no harder or easier than anything else I've gone through.
Yeah.
And that for me is what Situation Normal, the title of this talk, really encompasses.
And do you know something that I know? People are amazing. People will find a way. People will work it out. Yes, do we need help? And also we need to acknowledge that for some people, this has been horrendous. Mm-hmm. Perhaps the learning is there. How do I reach out and get help when I feel like this? I don't want to belittle what's happened. And at the same time, how do we, we understand fundamentally there is no normal. It's a delusion to help us feel safe. And when we can embrace that and say, yeah, okay, let's see what happens. Be present, notice what comes up, address what needs addressing now. Be a horse, basically.
Yeah, and believe in yourself.
It's a huge trust thing. It's a huge trust thing. And there's all sorts of things you can do to build self-trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dave.
Oh.
I've thoroughly enjoyed your backdrop. It's just...
Who have we got now? Oh, did you see what I just did? I looked behind, which is green, of course. We've got Floozy and John Joe. They're having some water yet.
Yeah, no, that just works so well. I'm stealing that idea.
Please do, steal away.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time. And I hope people have found the conversation useful. Yeah, lots of positive feedback on that.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Becky.
All right, well, stay on the line. I'll just bring this to a close. See you all soon, everyone.